This is very exciting. First review of this speaker in, well, the Americas, I guess. It used to be over there. Now it's still over there, but over here. So yeah, let's talk about this mystery speaker. So sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and let's talk about the speaker that no one else is talking about over here, which makes me very important. I knew about this speaker a little bit because I saw Taryn, the British audiophile, did a review on it about a year ago. And it looked awesome. The only problem was that, well, we couldn't get them here in the United States of America. And the price point really, really intrigued me because I think the takeaway was that they were pretty good. And I think the price at that time was £260, which is affordable. The price here, right now, in the United States, $500. I know that's more than £259. But we pay more for Q Acoustics, Wharfdale, Acoustic Energy here in the States than they do, well, in Europe. Conversely, in Europe, they pay a lot more for Emotiva or Schit or just Shelly Labs or whatever it is. It's just the way it is. It's just the way it is. Some things are never change. I'm sorry, my voice is a little bit rough. A little bit raw. My throat hurts. So let's take a closer look at the AE100 Mark IIs. This is a fairly compact speaker here. Let me give you some perspective. This is the speaker compared to a sand person. This is the speaker compared to a Nagaoka MP110. This is the speaker compared to a Metallica guitar pick. Okay? Now that we got that out of the way. Alright, woofer. 5 1/4 inch woofer. The spec sheet, I think we can find the spec sheets now. I think the speaker was under embargo until just recently. 1 inch soft dome tweeter, close to the woofer, which means getting close to a point source. Point source means that this thing is going to image in Soundstage well, or at least it should lend itself, this design should lend itself better to Soundstage and imaging. On the back, I have a slot port, and it says Acoustic Energy below it. And then down here, you got your binding posts. And I made a little bit of joke in the intro where I said binding post technology. It has fancy pantsy curved rounded corners. Now, I think this is made out of HDF instead of MDF, which is a product or a material that more companies are going to. Emotiva is now making their subwoofers out of HDF instead of MDF. So it's supposed to be better. I think you can use less of it. It's less resonant. And if anybody's ever worked with MDF before, whew, baby, you might want to wear a mask. Brown powdered sugar that doesn't taste good at all. Don't eat vaporized MDF. It's not fun. It's not cinnamon. I had these petite little beauties in my living room for about the last month. Well, it was since Cedia because the fine folks from Fidelity Imports grabbed me and said, "Hey, Randy," and then they punched me a couple of times and they said, "What are you doing?" No, just kidding. They were very nice. We sat down, we talked. They said, "Hey, I think this Acoustic Energy speaker would fit right into the ethos of the Cheap Audio Man channel." And I agreed. I was actually excited about it because I was interested in the speaker a long time ago. I've had them here since about 4 days after Cedia. All my speakers that come in go right into the living room and they take on cartoon duty or Fuller House duty or whatever duty that the kids are watching. To be fair, I will watch some football and then even some music through them. So these were hooked up to the Pioneer VLX VX305 home theater receiver. I ran these just as 2 channels, so running a phantom center channel, whatever you want to call it. There's only 2 channels. All the information is coming out of them. Dialogue was good. However, one of the things that we need to talk about is Soundstage and Imaging. Let's talk about Soundstage and Imaging. Since this is a bit of a smaller speaker, I had them in a very large room. And getting them close to a wall in a large room you think might be good because you get some bass reinforcement. However, with these, I didn't like them super close to the wall because I felt like the soundstage was a little bit weird. So if I pulled them out, and I do have somewhat symmetrical side boundaries, I pulled them out a little bit more. The Soundstage and Imaging got really, really good. The Soundstage and Imaging in this room, my office, where I do my near-field listening, close-up listening, was otherworldly. The only other speaker that has ever done as well as these speakers have for Soundstage and Imaging is the original ELAC debut B6. However, I think the Acoustic Energy AE100 Mark II does a better job than the ELAC debut B6 when it comes to imaging and depth of soundstage. I was listening to these in my office, was listening to Alice in Chains live, also listening to The Policy of Truth by Depeche Mode, which I haven't listened to for quite a while. Anyway, there's a part that goes, and it goes from like kind of the left speaker down to the right speaker, but kind of in the middle, and it was, and it felt, well, it didn't wrap all the way around me, but it was like forward, 3-dimensional, outside of the speaker. And the layers, especially the depth layers with this speaker, are fantastic. Somebody made a joke, cheap Audio Man Halloween costume, and on it says fantastic a lot. I got a kick out on it. So whoever made the cheap Audio Man Halloween costume, it's good. All right, I got my notes here. We're going old school. And talk about old school. This notebook's old school. This thing was under the Pacific Ocean in the early 2000s and maybe the late 90s. Still got a few pages left in it though, so it's still good. All right, apparently I don't have anything in here about Soundstage and Imaging. Anyway, I got to tell you, lateral Soundstage and Imaging, depth of Soundstage and Imaging, imaging, spectacular on this speaker. I mean, I thought it was going to be okay because of the design. Once you get the tweeter kind of close to the woofer, it's pretty good. Over the Hills and Far Away by Led Zeppelin. Just big. Imaging, I mean, I can go through all the ones I usually go through, but listen, take my word for it. Soundstage and Imaging is awesome. Let's talk about the bass. Bass. These have a low frequency spec reported of, I think, 51. The one thing I'll say about companies that are headquartered out of the UK, like Q Acoustics, is that they're pretty conservative with their low frequency response. So a lot of times Q Acoustics will say, these are rated around the 60s, and they'll go quite a bit lower. At 51, I think we have a similar situation here. This speaker felt like it was going much lower than 51. Did I measure it? No. But I listened to it with my ears, and this speaker reminds me of the PSB Imagine X1s, which come in at a similar price. They also remind me a bit of the CSS Audio Tory. But I don't want to give you the impression that this speaker is warm, because it is not warm. However, bass is full, extended, and fast. And guess what? I came up with a new torture test. Some people say, oh, this is a torture test for your speaker. Well, this one is a torture test for the speaker. Check it out. Get your guts in the a lot of energy, a lot of excitement, a lot of things going on in that song. That's right, it's the Heretic Anthem by our buddies over at Slipknot. That song is an absolute assault on the senses, and there are oogles and boodles and doodles of 16th notes on the bass drum. So, that's a great song to see if a speaker can handle it. Okay, this did an admirable job. most of the time you're going to need a pretty hefty motor structure on the old bass boomy woofer. It did a really good job though. For a $500 speaker, it kept up fairly well. And I would have no issue like listening to this or owning this as one of my main speakers. Did get a little bit on the top end, but we'll talk about that in the treble. However, since we're talking about treble, let's talk about the mid-range. Mid-range. All right. Oh, I also forgot to mention in the bass, Waffle at the 10-second mark. Waffle's by Seven Dust. Seven Dust is an awesome band. At the 10-second mark, there was a really good hit. I can't read my own writing. Oh, and the bass line was super separated out. That's another thing. Like, instrument separation is spectacular. It's fantastic. Instrument separation is really well done on this speaker. Oh, I know what I was saying. Bass line was plucky and deep. Didn't cover up anything. And it wasn't overbaked or sloppy. And that bass is, the way it's recorded, there's a lot of it. Okay, mid-range. Over the Hills and Far Away. The remastered version by Led Zeppelin. The first 52 seconds of that is basically just a acoustic guitar intro solo. And the way that the strings vibrated, a little bit on the cool side. So I wouldn't say that this was overtly caramelly, baritone-y, but the definition was there. The clarity was especially there. And I love clarity. Clarity for me is the sign of a speaker. Clarity for me is kind of like the epitome of what hi-fi is. Because we're all chasing clarity. And usually when people try to dismiss a product, they're like, well, your system isn't revealing enough. And that's clarity. But you can still get clarity on a budget. Like right here. Anyway, clarity, spectacular in the mid-range. His voice, Robert Plant's voice, at the 1 minute 28 mark was clean, again, clear, slightly stepped back, and it was a good handoff to the tweeter. This speaker, I think, is crossed over around the 2900 hertz, which is high for a speaker that has a soft tone tweeter. Usually a soft tone tweeter can go much lower, really around 1500 hertz. The woofer is handling the majority, if not almost all, of the mid-range. And whatever they chose for the material here did a great job. So it was good. A lot of times when it goes woofer to mid-range, there's a tonal shift. No tonal shift on this. Quite good. Quite good, good. Shoot to Thrill by AC/DC was crunchy, yet a little bit full. This is a very good mid-range here. Good balance. If it leans anywhere, it leans just slightly cool. Generally speaking, though, a speaker that leans or has a lot of detail is going to lean a bit cooler in the mid-range. At least that has been my experience, and that is the experience that I have with the AE100 Mark II. However, it's not super lean, okay? Just leans lean. Leans lean. Let's talk about treble. Treble. Look at the tweeter. Look at the tweeter. Look at it. Sorry. Treble. In the age of the... Okay, I know a lot of you guys are familiar with this track here. When I say it, you're going to know it. Treble. In the age of the consecrated vampire, we all get high. Yeah, it's by Rob Zombie. Let me repeat that. In the age of the consecrated vampire, we all get high. Rob Zombie. The 26-second mark, there's a tambourine, and the tambourine is throughout the rest of the song. I think it actually starts prior to the 26-second mark, but man, it is back to the left, and it was... The cool thing about that tambourine, though, and the reason why I mention it is because it is so separated out. It is so clean. A hit, maybe a hint of just a bit too much spice. And we will kind of continue to talk about that. But it was the one thing about this speaker that I'd never heard before on that song. So once again, in the age of the consecrated vampire, we all get high. Rob Zombie. Back to Over the Hills and Far Away. At the 2 minute 20-second mark, cymbals a titch hot. And there's slight sibilance on Waffle at the 1 minute 23-second mark with voice. Waffle by Seven Dust. So that tells me there's a little bit of boost, probably around the 4-6K. Also, that's makes sense that there's a little bit of a happiness going on up there with the cymbals and things like that. Is it a deal breaker? Absolutely not. If that boost, bump, whatever you want to call it, hump, pimple, if that pimple was around 2K, 1800 hertz, that would be probably a deal breaker for me. However, if you push any pops, spikes, anything like that above around 3, 4, 5K, I'm totally cool with it. Sometimes you will hear a bit of sibilance. You will hear a bit of a kind of like white noise piped in at the right time, at the right frequency. The sibilance can be slightly distracting, but I did listen to some of the most sibilant tracks I know, including the MTV Unplugged, the Alanis Morissette, King of Pain, and it wasn't, I mean, there was sibilance there, but it wasn't nearly as bad as I've heard it before. I think these speakers, the AE100 Mark II, handle sibilance just about as good as anything else, but there's something going on up there that sometimes, oh, hello. Hello, how are you, sibilance? Not bad, though. So what are my final thoughts? Such a trip that I found this notebook. Do you want to see the a free caustic and no free caustic? There you go. It's classified. It's classified. Actually, it is classified. Anyway, final thoughts. Harvester of Sorrow, one of my favorite tracks. A lot going on in that track. You can tell a lot about a speaker when listening to it. First of all, I have this written down. It was nuts, the amount of bass and cohesiveness and detail that was coming through that speaker. And I was playing them fairly loud, going between about 75 all the way kind of north of 80 dB. And they were holding together perfectly fine. And I think that was the big surprise for me. Generally, a smaller speaker has a tendency to fall apart, usually around 80 dB or so, and get shouty. Now, above 85 dB, you got a little bit in your face. When I first had these, partnering equipment. I had these hooked up to the Emotiva PT2, actually the Shelly Labs J2, running into the Emotiva PT2, then going into the Emotiva A1 mono blocks, and then out to the Acoustic Energy AE100 Mark II. Initially, when I was listening to these in the near field, I had the bass turned up +2, the treble turned up -2. However, for my final listening, I put them flat. So everything, all the impressions I have here are flat. All the impressions from out in the living room, that was flat as well. Back to Harvester of Sorrow. That song can be a bit hot on top. A lot of offbeat cymbals. So yeah. Anyway, that song can be fairly hot. And with a speaker that has a little bit of an emphasis on the top end, sometimes that can be too much. However, the Acoustic Energy, although they have a little bit of a, it's like the coach had a pep talk with treble around maybe 4, 6, 8K. Said, come on, guys, you can do it. And the speaker's like, okay, coach, let's do that. Anyway, even though there's a little bit of a pop up on the treble around here, these speakers did a great job with all different kinds of genres of music. I know you're going to say, well, Randy, you didn't listen to really any other kind of music other than your crazy, stupid metal stuff and stuff. Speakers can quickly fall apart. These did an admirable job of it. Soundstage and Imaging is deep, wide. Imaging is locked on. So, is there anything bad about these speakers? No. Do I have any concerns about these speakers? Yes, and that's the price. So, at $500, there is a ton of competition, including if you start to get it to the $600 price, there's a ton of competition. So, you are dealing with the likes of the ELAC, the new ELAC B2 Plus that comes in at exactly the same price. You have the SVS Prime bookshelves, around $600 now. Sometimes they go on sale. They used to be $500. One has the Polk R100s. You have the Wharfdale Diamond 12.2. Heck, you even have the Kef Q350s sometimes when they're on sale. And you also have the Wharfdale Denton 80th edition. Most of these speakers sound different enough that it's a tough comparison. However, the Wharfdale 80th edition, even though they sound a bit different, there's some similarities there. And the build quality on the Wharfedale Denton 80th blows every other speaker out of the water, including the Acoustic Energy. So how does it stack up against its competition? Well, you're going to have to wait for that in my next video or a future video. Overall, I think this speaker is really good. Really good. But there's also a lot of really good $500 bookshelf speakers out there. I don't have a problem recommending this at all. I think it's great. I think it has a neutral enough sound signature while still being exciting. I still think there's some bumps on the top a little bit, maybe even some bumps on the bottom, but the bass was not sloppy at all. And more than anything in a speaker, I want clarity. And this speaker provided me clarity. Tonally, I thought it was close to what I would consider to be true to life. Close enough for me, anyway. So, if you want to support the channel, you can sign up for Patreon, patreon.com/cheapaudioman, Patreon-only Zooms, Patreon-only Discord, Patreon-only Facebook. You can also use the links in the description. However, the link to the AE100 Mark II will not be an affiliate link. I guess they're just setting up retailers now, stuff like that. So I don't have an affiliate link with these guys. I will link it to Fidelity Imports and then maybe one of their retailers, but still, I'm not up to speed on exactly who's carrying this speaker. You can also use the thanks button down by the share button. Helps me bring videos to you like this. So you can buy me a cup of coffee or something like that. So don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu. Binge listen maybe through your new Acoustic Energy AE100 Mark IIs. Fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I'm the Cheap Audio Man.